Hi, this is the Australia group, and we'll be talking about Pakistani English and its background, history, and current facts about the language of Pakistani English.
Okay, so English was introduced to what is India in the 16th century by the colonial powers of Britain. What would later become Pakistan was in this region, and that language was used more by the elite few in the population that were dealing with the British powers, and that is how it started catching on, but it remained as a tool that only an elite few used. It wasn't something that was used commonly in everyday conversation between the average population, and it kind of seemed to carry that status.
Yeah, it was definitely an elite kind of language, like the most literary people, the rich, higher class people were the ones that used it primarily, but it was also used somewhat by lower classes. They were taught English in schools, but because there were so few people from native English speaking countries, well, predominantly England, there weren't any white British people in the country to teach English, and so they had other Indians teaching English that might not have necessarily known English very well, and so that's how it gained its status as a separate variety of English, because it was so isolated from native varieties of English, and it became even more so after Pakistan split from India.
That split happened in 1947 when India gained independence from Britain. So the latest numbers that I saw were from a 2003 census report that showed there's 16 million people that use English in Pakistan, but the overall population there is over 140 million. So it's actually a very small percentage of people there that use English. It's just over 11%. So that shows that it's not really like a highly used form of communication, and reinforces that it is primarily used by higher class citizens as well as institutions of power like judiciary systems, and like Parliament there typically does their business in English as well as records their records in English.
Yeah, and it's become, English has kind of lost its prominence, maybe not so much politically, but in a way politically.
Yeah, they're going to go back to Urdu. There was a constitutional amendment in 1973 that stated the country's official language would revert back to Urdu within the next 15 years, but that was never reinforced.
It didn't happen until very recently, when the youths have started becoming more interested in Western culture and using English more, and so Urdu is kind of being used as a linguistic symbol of the country's identity and as a way of separating it as an Islamic state and not being associated with colonialism, because English is kind of this like trash left behind from the colonial days, and they want to be considered their own identity as an Islamic state that's not under the influence of British or Western culture. They want to have their own culture. And so English is becoming even less prominent than before, and maybe it will even, since it's being enforced in law, that it might not even be used in the government anymore in the future. But we'll just have to wait and see.